Hello, my name is Tanner Schlag. I'm working on my Diff project, which is modeling early stage COVID. I have an Excel file right over here. Basically, it's all my data that I gathered and such. I did my calculation on the board, which I will show later. And I got a bunch of sources and such right over here. And if you look at, I made a bunch of graphs, got data. Essentially, what I have is I have dates. I chose to do this study over about a 6-month period because that's about how long the COVID antibodies last. I chose to do it at the beginning so that way we could model the spread of the disease better. So we had the dates, we had total cases added up cumulatively, which was very fun to navigate through and figure out exactly how to make the change in cases per week. And then we have total deaths, which I ended up not doing too much with, but it's still in the spreadsheet. So then I ended up separating that up into weeks, new cases per week, new deaths per week, etc., by just enumerating, subtracting the seventh value by the first value because it's cumulatively. So therefore we could get the change. And then after doing that, I did months, which was much easier because I could just do each month subtract by the last. And with the first month, you just subtract the last date by the first date. Then I found infection dates, which I went with percent of the United States, which was not a wise choice because that wasn't what I was looking for. I misunderstood what I was looking for infection rate. So therefore, you'll find my infection rate calculations on the board. And then I found death rates as well. I found that in about 3.45% of cases in this early time going, you had fatalities from COVID. There is a massive spike early in the graph, around weeks 5 to 10. There was a massive, large spike. And you have trend lines on here just to show roughly what it was showing. However, you can't really project past that because all it does is just jackknife straight up. And this is just a graph of total infections. Now, I found that on average, we assumed that if you didn't die, you recovered. We're not accounting for any side effects or anything, so therefore 96.55% of patients recovered on average. Then we go over to the calculations and such. So I used the SIR model, or susceptible, infected, recovered. And I could use that model because with the infections and such and the recoveries, you can't get infected if you already have the antibodies or are recovered. So therefore, that allows you to cut out a very significant chunk. So you have definitions up here. You have change and all that. You have the initial population, which is 329,340,000. That is the population of the United States as of March of 2020. Then you have beta, which is the transmission rate. You have IFT, which is the infected number, and you have SFT, which is the vulnerable population. Now, since it's early epidemic, you can model it pretty simply by just saying the chain IFT equals the initial of I times e to the power of beta minus the recovery rate times t. That beta minus the recovery rate is actually R, the growth rate. So therefore, since we only have the data we have, namely new cases and the cumulative and dates, you have to solve for R first. So then if you just take the derivative of up here, you will get this equation, di over dt equals R times I of initial times e to the RT. Then you just solve through that and you eventually get R equals 1 over change in time times the natural log of week 2 over week 1, because that's just the change from here. So the R at this point is approximately, because it's 1 week, so therefore that cancels this term out. So the R of this week is approximately the natural log of 2,470 over 340, or about 1.98, and that's what we use for the rest of the calculations. Now to find infection period, you just go, the recovery rate, you just go 1 over the infection period, so then 1 over 1.5, because we're taking time in weeks, remember? So therefore, you get 1 over 1.5, which is 0.66. So then to find beta, or the transmission rate, you just add together, as up here, R and Y, or R and gamma, sorry. And therefore you get 1.98 plus 0.66 equals 2.64. So that's about 2.64 people got infected at the early stages per person that was infected late before the disease ran its course and they got recovered. So now you head over here and you have the basic foundation of the SIR model just written right here. I wrote population back up again, and the susceptible population, since it's so early on, is equivalent to about the population. So therefore, that's what allows a lot of this generalizing to happen. So initial infected, according to the data by the New York Post, is I of 0 equals 88. So we had initially 88 people infected by March 1st. Now, this obviously isn't counting for false reporting or unreported cases. So then susceptible is just, this is just P. And you have R of 0, which is the recovery, which is obviously 0 because no one's recovered yet. And now, so you have these equations, which essentially just lead out. So you can plug in all our numbers, beta, S, I, they're their own thing, because that's the number of susceptible people, number of infected. Then you have the total population. And then you have di over dt, the change in the infected, which is basically just negative of this minus the recovered people, which is right here. And this has been my diff project, and I'm so sorry for taking so long.